Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I am the host of the Sip and Scale podcast. We have today's guest, Carlos. Listen, guys, for all of you that are watching, I've been watching podcasts for years, listening to podcasts. And one thing I really love about them is the long form narrative and conversations that people in business, in the venture capital community, health and wellness. I love the conversations and hearing people talk about, things that will affect their life in a positive manner, insights, stories. And today is our first episode. The goal of this is just to have a conversation between two friends. And I want to bring more of my friends that are in the entrepreneurial community on this call so we can just shoot the shit and talk about everything business, everything startups, talk about life, love, maybe. We'll see. And take it from there. So without further ado, Carlos is our first guest, and rightfully so. He's one of my really good friends, and he's really in the nitty-gritty of the startup space.
Yeah. Well, hey, dude, first of all, appreciate you having me on here, and I'm honored to be your first guest. So I just wanted to have it recorded in history that you still haven't told me happy birthday yet. And my birthday was yesterday, and I didn't hear anything from you, and I was totally testing you to see if you would message me. But no, I'm just joking. But it was my birthday, and I just wanted to shame you publicly.
This is a perfect opportunity to shame someone. And on the first episode of the Sip and Scale podcast, and rightfully so. I feel like an ass, but happy birthday.
Thank you.
Next year we'll have you on the podcast again, and I'll be sure to wish you a happy birthday live.
Yeah, no, I thought that would be funny. I was sitting there, I was like, yeah, I should totally do this. 100% I should do this. But that's also something that I would do. So yeah, my name's Carlos. I would definitely identify myself historically as a salesman. I'm also a programmer. I've taught myself over the years, and I really wanted to kind of combine those two skill sets because I do think they're fairly deadly. Maybe less so today with ChatGPT, but I still think it's probably one of the most important things I did was learn to code. And so I can build kind of version 1 apps today on my own, which is kind of what I always wanted to do. And so I have a sales job for the day at this great company called CodeShop. It's really fantastic. I do have a side hustle. My side hustle today could be full time. I don't understand the rush of a lot of people trying to just quit and jump into it. You tend to do pretty foolish things when you do that. And I have worked a lot of jobs and been very broke. So I'm trying to just be careful about taking that step. But I do think maybe sometime this year, I can probably just gracefully jump off. I mean, I can jump now, maybe not so gracefully. I would panic a little bit, but gracefully I'll be able to do it full time this year. So that's exciting. It's really me just putting the brakes on it. And so I've worked as a W-2 career seller. I've worked at I think it's 6 tech startups now. And it is a lot. And so, yesterday I turned 29. So I've worked at more places than some people work their entire lives in just a few years. And so that it's good and bad, I think. Some of it comes with definitely I could have made some better choices along the way. I should have probably thought more about where I worked and stuff like that. But I don't think especially in selling, no one really makes it clear. At least it wasn't super clear to me in terms of like
Especially
where I
when you're
should.
very young. Like if
Yeah,
you're,
for sure. Yeah,
no,
what they tell you to do is just get an SDR
that,
job,
yeah.
yeah, and then just do that. But really, if you don't, so I have a blog post on this, and I was saying that you have to be aware of the SDR trap, because there's people who get stuck in it for years, and I was partially stuck in it, and I'm really glad I was stuck in it because it made me who I am. But I know people that weren't able to make it out of it,
Why
so they have
why
a
did
hard time.
you why did you make it out of that trap? Like, okay,
I,
first
yeah,
question
sure.
is, how do you get into the trap?
Yeah, sure.
There might be some salespeople watching this, and they're in your position, and or they're in the position you were in, 3 4 years ago, and they're like, they feel like they're trapped. Like, how did you get out of that, and why is it that you kind of escaped the sales matrix while most people don't?
Yeah, so I would say it's so to me it's sort of a complex answer, but if I were to boil it down, I never like I live in New York City today. That's how you and I met. I never thought I would live in New York. I guess I just didn't care. I'd say I was a super ambitious person, but I don't know. I just always thought I'd live next to my parents who live in Orlando right now, and then basically I had a tough time in my earlier years. I mainly like more sad memories, at least in career wise, of like trying to jump around and figure things out. And I always had a roof over my head and that. But I do think that when you're young and you're ambitious and stuff, you try to you do identify quite a lot with your career and advancing. At least I did. And so I think, frankly, the way I look at it is I was really desperate to just jump into tech. And so what I should have done was maybe slow down and realize that, it's one of those like age old advices. It's like, I shouldn't have freaked out because like ultimately it maybe would have made a difference. But ironically, by not being desperate, you wouldn't at the same time be kind of put in that position. At least you say that in what's it called, in hindsight, but through foresight, when you're looking forward or when you're moving forward, it really feels vital. So I took some jobs at some companies, and those companies weren't necessarily bad. They were just mixed in with some really intense personal struggles with like some of my family's health. They had some health issues that popped up, and it just turned into like a giant clusterfuck. So then I was essentially, jumping from like a company that maybe didn't have product market fit to then a company, and then health struggles hit and I can't focus. And then the COVID hits, and man, I felt like I couldn't catch a break. And the irony is that, it could always be worse. 100% of the time, it could have always been worse. So I'm really grateful still to this day to have gone through those hardships. I'd rather have gone through them then versus 20 years from now. I'm sure they'd be much more difficult then. So when I landed at Coach Hub, my day job now, they were looking for an SDR, and I was pretty committed to moving to New York. I knew I had to change my life, and I knew moving to New York would do that, and it 100% has. So I'm eternally grateful to be here. But basically, I was one of the first SDR hires in North America. And I remember, like, I guess because I was so battle hardened from working at like companies that didn't have product market fit, um, like when you work at a company that does have product market fit, it's like a
So much
magnitude
easier.
easier. Yeah,
You
it's
get
like
on
much
calls
easier.
with people, and you're like, wait, you want to schedule a call?
Yeah, correct.
And
Exactly.
you're
So
like,
it definitely the easiest job I've ever had in my life was an SDR role at Coach Hub, and people will like chat with me about it, and then they'll say like, "Oh, well, I think it's pretty hard," and I'm always like, "I mean, if you just call enough people, like people are interested in coaching." So anyway, so I was extremely clear and aggressive because I had been an account executive prior, that, hey, I want to move up. I'm ready to hustle for you. Like, I just moved to New York. I have a ton of bills. Like, everything's much more expensive, but I want to move up. And then I think the timing worked out because the founder moved to New York. And so, man, I started going to the office every day. I was the first one there, last one to leave. I always made sure of that. And then I think that got me like so many points until one day my vice president was telling me, he's like, hey, you really should chat with him about this specifically, about you moving up, because I don't want to lose you. In so many words, he said that. And so I had a one-on-one with my CEO about it. And then ironically, like 2 weeks later, I hear that they're opening a role for me to interview for an AE. And so what I ended up finding out was, due to that conversation with my CEO, he basically instructed the vice presidents to take headcount at an enterprise level and push it over to me instead.
Oh.
And so by him giving me that opportunity, I then was able to move into an SMB role. Now I'm a mid-market role. I made club last year. So that's really awesome.
Can you explain that for people that don't know what club is?
Yeah, so I don't know like a technical definition of it, but President's Club is just like typically the best sellers at an organization in terms of quota attainment. So I think I hit 117% last year. And honestly, like, sounds great, but there's people on my team that were like 150, 160%. So I actually think I was the last person that made club,
That was also your first experience as an AE, right?
Yeah. Not as an AE, but an AE at that level. Yes, I closed some big AAA brands, like probably most notable that people recognize, at least in the United States, like Bose. Bose is a huge brand. And so that's probably my claim to fame today. And so that's the type of deal that makes like VPs of sales like salivate, so it's pretty cool to be working with organizations like that. And so and ironically, maybe super confident, or maybe super confident is not the word, but just confident in like my ability, because I'm already like super confident. Right? So,
We know.
but yeah, exactly. That's funny. So, but it's made me much more confident just across the board in pretty much everything I do, which kind of led me to then start that side hustle. And that side hustle today can pay my bills. That I'm just being careful about jumping ship. I'm probably being a little too careful, but that's okay. I've been like totally poor and broke, and I don't want to do that again. So I'm cool with it taking a few months longer. I'm not in a rush.
I've realized, there's people we're very sensitive to risk. And so what I've seen with a lot of successful founders, people that go from like a W-2 job into the startup spaces, they have some form of a cushion, or they have some like period of time where they decide, okay, this is the right moment, because I know that I'm not going to lose everything if I jump ship from my company.
Sure.
And that's why you see like a lot, especially in the tech space, you see folks that maybe they've worked 5-6 years at a Facebook or a Google. They've already given themselves enough of a cushion financially where they
Sure.
can take that leap of faith into a venture that they want to start themselves. And for me, it was the same. I was on the same boat when I started Delegate, where I had had a cushion of passive income from a real estate business, and that gave me the confidence, if you will, to be like, yeah, you know what's the worst that can happen? At the end of the day, if I have to live on $3,000, $4,000 a month, I'll do it, and it's worth taking the risk. So I'm glad that you're at that position now where you're looking at taking that risk and taking the leap into the startup space.
Yeah, sure. And so, I mean, I don't know if you want to get too into the details with your real estate business there, but one thing we were chatting about the other day is even when you started the real estate business, there was a cushion as well, right? And so I think it's something that you were like, oh yeah, I guess there was. And so I tend to find that pretty much everyone, I found very few actual, I guess, entrepreneurs or just founders in general that jump into it that don't have, either some form of help from, wealthy parents, or yeah, they have a really sick job and it's cushiony. The hard part with like working at Fang these days is that it's just so good that you don't want to leave. Now, recently that's come under flack for some of those individuals. Like some people are kind of ashamed to be working at Google. I mean, I don't think it's everyone, but I've heard of some of my friends saying that they're like, oh, I want to get out of here now. But I am actually a huge believer in James Altucher. He's one of my favorite writers. I was reading his stuff when I was like in college, freshman like days, and so one thing he writes a lot about, he says good entrepreneurs are not risk takers; they're actually risk mitigators. And almost every single one, like a good example of this is he picks like maybe a extreme case is John McAfee, who made McAfee software. He was like, I think he was doing a couple mil a year before he quit his full-time engineering job to do it. And I think that's an extreme example. But the good thing about having a good sales years is that for me, I live super frugally, and I have roommates. I have a pretty sick apartment, but it's cheap. It's right next to the subway.
Yeah.
Love that because I save a ton of money. So I'm able to have like quite a lot of cash to take smart bets, and that's where I say like I could literally today with my side hustles income pay myself, and then on top of it I have cash sitting for bets like that. So it's actually not much of a risk to do it. It's just more about like, hey, you have pipeline built up at the organization. You can make the company money. You're making yourself money. If there's a work-life balance, you basically have to endure a little bit more suffering than maybe if you were doing it full time. But that's okay. I mean, I think the best time to do it is in your 20s. And so far I have one more year. so I have one more year where I could endure the suffering before maybe I'm socially pushed to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's interesting, you're talking about the risk mitigation, and one thing that comes to mind is we're both fans of him, Alex Hermosi. Talks about like if everything went to shit tomorrow and I lost everything, I can Uber and strip at night. And the reality is, yes, Carlos, if everything went to shit, you can do the same thing.
I could probably make the same living if I did that.
Probably true. But with you, the way I see it is, you're kind of forgetting the fact that you have skills that are valuable to the marketplace.
Sure,
you
yeah.
have sales skills that are very valuable to the marketplace. And God forbid something happens to your business tomorrow and you do lose everything. You have one of the best skills, not because you can sell other people on your value. You know how to sell. If you know how to sell, you can sell people on your value. You can come to me, you can go to any startup and be like, hey, I want to join your company. This is how much I want paid. I'll start tomorrow. So have comfort in knowing that you have one of the most valuable skills in the marketplace. And not many people can say that.
Yeah, sure. We've also chatted about this a little bit, but ironically, selling has become this kind of like God skill recently. And it's funny because it's crazy for me to say like when I was growing up, because I feel like I graduated high school like a few years ago, but it was like over 10 years ago now. So when I was coming out of high school and into college, like for sure, the skill to learn was, at least in this more tech world, was definitely engineering. Always wanted to be an engineer, and I think ultimately I did take that plunge on my own time. But selling wasn't cool until you started seeing a lot of people being able to just commoditize the engineering. And then when ChatGPT came out, like how many people are on like an acquire.com or any of these acquisition sites, and they're just selling the SaaS app with no customers, right? And so ironically, and you see this in the VC world as well with companies and their ridiculous valuations, focusing on, I remember one one like talk show or talk like fireside chat that I went to in Orlando in particular. This company had just raised money, and me being like somewhat of a salesman, thinking like, okay, cool, more runway to do stuff, and everyone just erupts and like cheers, and then I was like, no, like it's actually opposite. Like that's actually the worst day of your life because you just took on a huge debt, and the debt has to get paid back. Maybe not financially, right? That's kind of the VC business model, but socially, it will get paid back. Your reputation pays it back, and that is, one of my favorite lines is when Warren Buffett says, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and all but 5 minutes to destroy it. And so, ironically, today profitability is what is cool. So now I find myself like everyone thinks I'm cool now, but like no one thought I was cool like the first few years of my role.
Oh, you're not raising, $3 million in your seed round. Like you're not cool at all.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So,
you're bootstrapping that? What do you mean you're bootstrapping your company? Like that was
I actually, I know a founder in particular who I went to, a good friend of mine. I'm just not going to say names, so it can never come back on me. but they know what I'm talking about. There's a founder in particular who had raised like a ton of money, and then I remember like just visiting their apartments, and I think just the philosophy is different. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have like a nice life or anything like that. Like I do think people, it's like if you're in a position for it, that's one thing. But I just think the philosophy of some of these things and the way they think about it is just kind of fucked up. So I went to their apartment, and dude, my CEO of a company, like coach at the time, I think they did like 100 mil or something that year. And his apartment in the West Village was like, I don't know, it was like $6,000-$7,000 a month in rent, he had told me. And like, cool, understandable. $6,000-$7,000 a month in rent is not even that ridiculous in New York. It sounds ridiculous everywhere else, but not crazy, especially for a company doing that much money. The company had raised over, like, I think they raised $330 million. I mean, so, $6,000 is like pretty small, like drop in the bucket for when you're talking like not even a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. And so this company had raised, not even a quarter of that, but they raised like, a couple tens of millions of dollars or something like that. Man, I go into this guy's apartment. This company's nowhere near making money. This guy has like one of the nicest apartments I've ever seen in New York, and he's paying like $10,000 a month for it. And then I remember like just chatting with him. I was like, yeah, like, is the company doing like super well? He's like, yeah. I was like, so is it like revenue based and I'm thinking like revenue, like you have to make money to consider yourself doing well. Personally, maybe it's like an acquisition play, but I don't understand that world. So if it is, I really shouldn't comment on it. Yeah. So, and then he's like, no, I just really wanted like a good like headspace. It was good for like my mental health and like running the ship. And I was like, that is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. That's literally I instantly lost respect for him. Like as soon as he said that. And I'm not saying he needs like a $1,000 a month place, but it was just like, the answer to me was just so ridiculous that I was like, dude, don't you understand that this runs out? And ironically, later on, they were not able to raise another round, which is like, for me, it was like the cherry on top, which like, hate to say I told you so, but it's not even I told you so. It's just actually common sense. It's so there's a huge, go for it.
Sorry. Why do you think that? So there's like I've seen two types of entrepreneurs. I've seen the entrepreneurs that they like from the get-go, they're very they're very frugal about how they spend their own money, and frugal about how they spend other people's money.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then you have, the founders and entrepreneurs that, their mindset is, we have to go out, and our first priority should be raising money, and then once we raise money, we can figure out like product market fit, and like figure out how to scale this. And in the interim, I'm going to live it up, because raising, $50 million is an accomplishment in and of itself. And I'm wondering, like, why there are those two types of people. Is it, in your thinking, is it more of an experience thing? Like, it's just where they came from shaped the way they look at money, at growing a business? Or is it a personality thing?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I have hunches on it. Of course, you never know, right? It's all up to the individual. I don't know what their life is like prior. I don't know what their life experience are like prior. But I do think I have a good gauge of reading people. I mean, I have to do that professionally, you know. So, and I've done it my whole career. I've just for some context, I've made over 250,000 cold calls. I have to read if people are interested in hearing me out and stuff, and the vibe they give off. So I think I have a pretty, it's finely tuned. But I do think most of it probably just comes from, just probably like old tech culture of hailing the engineer. So I love engineers. I'm like a shitty engineer myself, but I like to. I do hate labels in general, and so like the engineer label was like a very powerful label for the last like I don't know, I guess like 30 years or so, maybe even in the 90s, right? Like even 80s, but especially very early 2000, very late 90s was very powerful title. Very powerful title in 2000s when Facebook, even MySpace and all these companies were around making like billions. And I just think that I don't want to say reality has caught up because we know that's probably not true, or we just don't know how that works. Sometimes you like to say, yeah, it's caught up, but then it does something crazy, like stocks going crazy during COVID, right? For example. But I do think a lot of it has to do with that culture of like, hey, the engineer's always right. They're geniuses. Like a good example of this is SBF. This guy
Yeah,
robbed people of
I was
billions of
just thinking,
dollars,
give
and
him
then
all the
he,
money, because he's
yeah, I mean, the
a
guy's a
genius.
fucking idiot. Like that's point blank. That's all he is. He's a fucking idiot. So it's like, but everyone, like he was playing like legal. There's like this famous like hit piece on him, or not hit piece, like a journal thing, whatever. And he was like playing League of Legends, talking to like Andreessen Horowitz, and they were like, "This guy's God." I mean, like, get your head out of your ass, like this guy's not God. He's just an engineer. He's a nerd, and
Yeah,
he might have something interesting. Ultimately, he didn't have morals. His effective altruism was totally incorrect. He spent hundreds of millions of dollars on himself, split hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions into political donations,
PR.
and that
Yeah,
probably saved him. So it's like for me, that's kind of what I see the culture is, and so it's really interesting for me. I know a few engineers, and I mean, obviously, this is not representative of the whole. I'm sure there's more like them out there, but I know a few engineers today that are very much like revenue focused. And I think those are 10x engineers in my eyes. Like that's the actual 10x engineer in terms of like they see the end goal, maybe not in terms of raw engineering talent, but I don't care about raw engineering talent. I can outsource quite a lot of it today. And that's what scares engineers today, where they're becoming less valuable in that sense. I still think it's an extremely valuable skill set, and I think it will be for a very long time. And personally, just on the AI bit, because this gets brought up with engineers, I think that we will be paying extra to talk to humans one day versus a robot, right? Because even today, I want to talk to a human. I still want to talk to him because I want my problem solved. So that's kind of where I think the whole thing could stem from. I mean, it's a pretty complex orb or web.
yeah.
So that's just one of the many possibilities. But yeah, I'm starting to see now more engineers care about selling and seeing how it's vital. In fact, before I write any code, I instantly am talking to customers, users, and I'm like, is this valuable? Okay, I'm going to send you a Stripe paywall. Can you pay me like $1,000 or a couple $100, whatever the number is?
Yeah.
And then before I have any code written, I do that. So, and I think that's probably the right way to build for like most bootstrappers in general. Yeah.
You're talking a little bit about kind of the future of AI, human interaction versus AI. I happen to be in this interesting time where I'm in the human capital business. So, for those of you that are watching, I am the founder and CEO of Delegate.co. We are a staffing solution, an outsourcing company for small, medium-sized businesses currently, majority of them in the real estate and short-term rental space. And so that's a little background there. And over the last few months, we have seen this huge shift from companies really focusing on personnel to focusing on AI. And the one I just came back from a conference, and what was very interesting was talking to a lot of the really old school hospitality companies that have been around for 30 years. And these are a bunch of boomers, yes, but they brought up a really good point about the human experience in something like customer service. So just as a background, right now in the short-term rental industry, there's a bunch of startups coming up that are really automating a lot of the customer service in hospitality, answering general questions, answering questions about reservations, trying to upsell additional services to guests. And anyway, a lot of the people that we spoke to, they're like, yeah, but at the end of the day, and one person remarked, at the end of the day, when someone goes into a rental that they just got, and they go to the bathroom and they see shit stains inside the toilet, do they want to talk to an AI, or do they want to talk to a human being that can actually hear them and be empathetic of the situation? And the reality is that AI isn't there yet. And so I agree with you. Like, there will come a time where people will pay more for that human interaction because it's much more high value. Now that depends on how good the AI gets within the next few years, which I'm sure it's not going to get any worse.
Yeah, 100%. I agree on that. Yeah, it's interesting to see like how it develops. Like, I'm not at all. I do know an expert. We know a mutual expert in AI, our friend Elman. So I always just ask him. I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "It's a shitstorm." It's just like such a funny response to it. But it's interesting seeing how it's used in how it will be used in all those areas. But 100% at the end of the day, nothing beats chatting with a human. I mean, go for it.
What do you think of the new? I've seen commercials and demos of this online, demos, I should say, of the automated AI call scheduler, where a lot of these like AIs have now really automated the scheduling aspect or the cold calling of certain types of businesses. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see it in the industry becoming like commonplace, or is it just still too infant of a product?
Yeah, for sure. At least in terms of scheduling, I mean, I think that's almost like a data entry job. So I definitely see that becoming standard, at least like if I call an organization and want to have a cleaning done in my apartment or a schedule something, 100% that's an easy role to, I think, outsource to something as dumb as an artificial intelligence today, at least. In terms of cold calling, it's funny because I have thought quite a lot about cold calling because I am the most prolific cold caller I know, and I hope to never stop cold calling, whether I'm working for myself, even when I'm working for myself, right? So when I look at like my success in cold calling, I'm not sure. I think today an AI couldn't do as well, but I think it's because, you know, I can meet the people where they're at with information and just kind of can read into when I should and shouldn't say things. I do think you can train a robot to do that by a certain point, but I don't think it's going to be the easiest thing because there's, intuition plays a
Yeah.
a huge part in that whole thing, and intuition is probably a difficult thing to teach. Maybe it isn't. I mean, maybe that is what they teach because at the same time, like sometimes I'll ask ChatGPT for like, hey, I have this presentation or I have this, like, here's data. How do I structure this? And it's like, oh, here's a great way. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Right. So
Yeah.
at the same time, like maybe that's wrong. But I do think that that's going to be hard to outsource. And I think the most important thing is I think one reason it's going to be hard to outsource is I just wonder how fast it'll get good at tonality, because I actually think tonality is like 20 to 30% of the cold call. And it's probably the thing that I think gets me the most points by just being like, hey there, how are you? Or maybe that was a terrible example, but because I haven't done some cold calls in like a month or so.
Yeah.
So, but there's kind of ways that
Oh
I
yeah.
influx my voice and change my tone, and I actually think that it makes a huge difference compared to when I don't do it. So I think that's going to be really difficult, at least today, because now you have like libraries that do this. And so again, I'm not an AI expert, so maybe someone can figure it out. But every demo I've heard of it is definitely subpar to like a
Yeah.
good prospector.
Yeah. And it's
So
almost like it's orchestrated. So it's because it's
correct, yeah,
orchestrated doesn't account for those
yeah,
externalities and tonalities that you often have in cold calls. I like to it's I am kind of laughing at this inside. I'm like, it reminds me of um, something I heard from years ago from like a dating coach, that if you're approaching a girl and you're like, "Hey, how you
yeah.
doing?"
I've done that many times.
I'm saying this, and you're like, body language is. I mean, if you're in person, obviously body language is a big thing, but it's like tonality. It's like, "Hey, how's it going? Are you enjoying your drink?" And if I change that tone to like, "Hey, how are you?"
Mhm,
See how
mhm.
that shift in tonality makes people more comfortable, and especially if you're cold calling, tonality is going to make or break the first 5 seconds of that conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
tonality actually conveys confidence, and ironically, even if you are dying on the inside talking to like a pretty lady at the bar, you can definitely fake it till you make it. You can definitely be like shitting bricks and just be able to carry yourself if you have that. I can, at least I have that ability from just all the thousands of cold calls I've done where I hear something super awkward and I almost find pleasure in hearing the prospect like squirm on the phone by now. It's kind of like maybe a little strange, but that's how I know like it's working. Like the silence is working and being able to withstand the pressure.
yeah,
But the tonality is also just I would say tonality is obviously the like how your voice sounds, right? But the other side of it is too is like knowing when to pause, knowing how to like how long to pause as well. Like I'm sure you could train an AI to do this, but there have been some uncomfortable pauses in my career, at least prospecting. And man, if I had said something, I'm sure I would not have gotten the meeting. 100% I'm positive I wouldn't have gotten the meeting. And that's just something you kind of learn from experience. And that's the part where that's hard to that seems to me hard to teach. maybe it's actually the easiest thing to teach. I could be totally wrong about it, right? So, but that is what I haven't seen in demos today. And I have friends that work on this today, and some of them have shown me, and it's not. I'm impressed that it can do that, but it definitely doesn't replace
Doesn't replace
a good
Carlos
prospector.
yet.
Yeah, it doesn't replace me yet, for sure. If someone needs me to tear through a phone book, the AI can probably do it faster than me. But if you were to give me enough time to get through, I would have more meetings. 100% of the time, I'd have more meetings.
Right.
So that means I'd have more
Rate,
revenue.
your
Yeah.
success rate. There's speed, and then there's the idea of like getting through it, just pure speed of getting through the calls. Because if you have an AI, and you have a lead list of, let's say, 30,000-40,000 people, you can get through those much faster, but your close rate is going to be much lower.
Yeah, 100%. So it's tough too for businesses that, like, I don't know, take a more spammy approach into. This is where, like, my side hustle helps, where it's like I help with prospecting, and inevitably some of it is spammy, unless you're like super personalized on there. But you can try your best to not be spammy, and just think ahead of time, like, what is going to resonate versus, like, I don't know, like, if I'm a new startup, I get Apollo.io or Lucia or something, or these are great tools. But
you told me to get Zoom info. I remember
Zoom info,
you.
yeah.
That was expensive.
Zoom info's in the B2B selling world totally worth its salt. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars of difference in not having it versus having it, and having like seasoned pros. 100%. So totally worth its salt. But Apollo and Zoom info, excuse me, they might market themselves as that, but I don't think that's who they're really servicing, like enterprise businesses. They're really servicing
small to medium sized businesses.
Yeah, people that can't afford Zoom info yet, and like they'd probably hate if I said that, but that's just the reality of where they're at. They're still a fantastic product. I use them, but I also know, like, if I need phone numbers, and if I need C-suite phone numbers or vice president phone numbers or like heavy directors phone numbers, I go to Zoom info. 100% of the time I go to Zoom info.
So I'll tell you one thing. So I started using Zoom info last year. The reason I started using them was because of your recommendation that they were, the best kind of B2B lead gen database. However, what I realized is the people we were going after were small to medium-sized businesses.
Not on there. Yeah, correct.
So we let the subscription, the yearly contract expire. But now our business is growing, and now we're trying to go after, the huge enterprise clients. So we're like, shit, we got to get Zoom info again.
Yeah, sure.
But for the time being, we were using Apollo. But yeah, it's super. I think going back to the AI thing, I think that there are going to be certain industries that are going to see total shifts in productivity because of AI.
Yeah.
Sales, to your point, like, depending on the industry you're in and depending on what's being sold, I think good salespeople are here to stay. It's just that, like, the lower level tasks in the sales cycle, those are going to get automated, in my opinion.
Sure.
Like the scheduling. On the customer service side, majority of the business that we do is on the customer service side. I look at it as like 70 to 80% of queries are going to be able to be handled by some AI solution, and then that last like what I like to call in logistics we call it last mile shipping. In customer service, I call it last mile customer service. All of the high level queries and issues that come up, whatever the business is, that needs to get handled by a human being, because they have tonality when they talk to someone. They can really be empathetic. and that cannot be replaced as of yet by an AI.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I also think, it's like, a lot of times you don't even need an AI, like, or if you do, it's like just reading an FAQ. It's like, where's the bathroom? It's like, we've gotten that question before. There, or like, what's a nice Mexican restaurant nearby? It's like this one, So even then, like the usage of a Chat GPT like 4 is really not today, even for like Delegate's purposes. I don't think, if 70 to 80% of everything is being answered already, that means we know what the question is. So that means we could prepare ahead of time. So we still don't even have a real utilization of, like, for example, like, I think something that's really cool that the ChatGPT does now is, like, with Dolly, like, it can create these new images and stuff, and that's cool to me because that's like something that, of course, it's not net new. It's built off other things, but it might be the first iteration that it's ever run with the prompt that you have. But in business uses, a lot, like, maybe one day there's an AI that's like, yes, you should purchase this software,
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you're spending $1 million, you're still going to want to talk to someone. Like, at least today, you're going to still want to talk to someone. You're like, listen, my AI said I should buy you. I'm totally down to buy you. Just help me be confident in that choice. You still, at least as of today, people aren't confident in that. It's a really good way to segue into making a final decision, but it is not the final decision maker still. The final decision maker today tends to be the CFO. It's not even the CEO anymore. The CFOs are now blocking CEOs, which is, like, really funny. So I don't see it. Again, I could be totally wrong on this stuff. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I have a hard time seeing how I already have a difficult enough time trying to convince people that, yes, this investment is going to be worth it. Yes, you're going to get your money back, etc. Like, if an AI told you that, like, what's the difference? Unless you're able to plug it into, like, I don't know, like a Barometrics or Profit Well type area where they have total visibility into your entire business model. And they're like, yes, 100%, like, this will somehow churn out an ROI. But even then, like, it's still sporadic, it's still random. And so since it's random, you can control it as much as you can. But it seems like, at least for the next, at least few years, maybe this changes very quickly, but at least the next few years, like, enterprise sellers, like good enterprise sellers that build relationships and still trust in people and stuff, it seems to be hard to replace.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example of this in the present. So I've never used a consultant before, um, like a direct consultant for my business. And now I'm in a phase of growth within my company where I have to bring in uh, new leaders. I have to hire for new positions. I need to restructure our organization, and this is my first time. I mean, I've had different businesses in the past, but this is my first time managing, team over 50 people,
Sure.
and I don't, and also in an interesting industry where it's not like, you can go online and, like, there are resources about scaling e-commerce companies or scaling your your salon business. There's a set of resources and people out there. So I went to a consultant that's specific to my industry, which is outsourcing, and
Mm-hmm.
I had an hour long conversation with this individual, and it was the most fruitful hour of just
Mm-hmm.
back and forth talking that I've had in a long time. And as you were talking about AI and how, like, we use it on a daily basis, I thought to myself, I'm like, it's gonna be a very, very long time before ChatGPT can really give me the nuanced consultation and feedback that this guy gave me in the span of an hour.
Yeah, yeah. This is like the whole Picasso thing. It's like, when Picasso, this lady asked him to make a painting and he makes one in like 30 seconds. And he's like, yeah, it's like $1 million. And she's like, $1 million? Like, you made that in 30 seconds? He's like, yeah, but, it took me 30 years to be able to make that in 30 seconds. So, we want results. We don't want like, so maybe one day, if you give it enough of,
Data set.
just yeah, I guess it could work. I'm not an expert. I think I told you this, but so I have a friend, Ryan Culp, and he lives down in Atlanta. And he was like, "Hey, Carlos, like I need help building a house." So I went down for like a weekend to help him build it.
Build a
And
house?
so, yeah, a house. I
You
think
know
I
how
showed
to
you a picture
build
of it.
you know how to build a house?
Yeah, it's like I think of the Irishman, so it's like I heard you paint houses, so I think I'm like a hitman now. But so I don't know. I definitely have no idea how to build houses, but that's why I went down.
Yeah,
Because it just seemed interesting and just something new that I've never done before. Definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done for sure, and we made a ton of progress on it. Definitely not done, and I don't know where it's at now. I think it's near completion. But what I found myself is like when I was going to like a bar and introducing myself to people, they're like, "What do you do?" And so part of me was like, maybe I should tell them that like I build houses because everyone in New York works in tech or finance,
yeah.
or and I was like, it just like let's say you're hitting on a girl, right? It's like, okay, you're like another Murray Hill dude that's in finance, and you go to Equinox,
Yeah.
and I was
Finance.
sitting, yeah,
Finance.
yeah. And so I was like, maybe I should start telling people like I build houses instead. And so I even did because technically that's a true statement, right? I have built a house, part of a house. And so I started telling people that, and they were like way more interested in chatting with me. So it's like really funny. So I think the same thing with the AI. It's just kind of like such a overdone conversation. But ironically, enterprises love chatting about it because they feel so threatened by it. So it's constantly like top of mind, and they're terrified of sharing data with like open AI and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, maybe that's worth concerning yourselves with, but I'm actually more scared of the data that just Google harvests on
Oh
me every
yeah.
day, and Facebook and Instagram. Like, I think that's actually a concern.
They have
Um,
more
you know,
personal data.
yeah.
Um,
So but the enterprise thinks it's personal. So, anyways, yeah, that's another rabbit hole.
I'm
So we
I'm
could chat about it another
attending
time.
I'm attending there's a conference in August. It's like the yearly AI conference in Vegas. And there's a panel discussion. It's like the intersection of human experience and AI. So I'm going to be like that part of the conversation where we're talking
Hmm.
about, replacing the human experience.
Yeah, sure.
And the the list of companies, I'm talking huge corporations, like hundreds of different companies, Fortune 500 companies that are attending this. I think specifically for the reasons you just mentioned. Um,
Yeah, sure.
if
Sure.
they're very much concerned about uh, data security, and at the same time, it's one of those frothy situations, I believe, where there are a lot of companies that they're like, we want to. I've spoken to people about this, just this week, where old school companies, medium sized businesses, they're like, we want to like streamline our operations and integrate AI
Yeah.
into the operation, and they don't necessarily. And this isn't like this isn't criticizing them or anything because their mind is in the right place, but they don't necessarily see how the the AI solutions are going to streamline their business. They just know that because other people in the space are doing it, that they should be doing it too.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. 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 Yeah.
so yeah, we're trying on our end at Delegate. We're trying to um, really merge our human capital service with and partner with AI companies in different industries to provide people the human element to the AI solution. I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
going to
yeah.
be like the future. And I think it applies to any industry, even sales. Like um, if you go in and you're like, a sales team, and you go working at different companies, if you're able to provide a if a component of your business is automated through AI, you have a lot more leverage over a sales team that's strictly using, cold callers, and human salespeople.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a super smart play, especially for who you target and who you segment, because at least in the short-term rental industry, for example, I mean, they are not the most technically savvy, and so what you're doing is introducing a usable format for technical savviness, and I think that's probably worth more, way more, from a mindset shift perspective than what they're paying you
Yeah.
every month, because then it really does open quite a lot of doors for them in terms of like, oh, like what other areas are we not thinking about? Like, how do we get into this? But I do remember even years ago when I was working at this company called Flex Receipts, and so my CEO is Tomas. Love Tomas. He's like I really haven't chatted with him in a few years, but I still consider him like an older brother. And so my VP of sales, Sam, I love Sam. He's an incredible salesperson, probably the best salesperson I've ever met. And he was sitting there when they were leaving a conference in San Francisco, and they were talking about AI in like 2017 or 2018, which LLMs I think were, or at least GPT was. I don't remember if it was a thing by then or not, but it was I think in the works.
It
And
was still an academic project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so then my VP's like was telling me that my CEO, they talked about AI there. And then the CEO's like, oh my God, like we need AI in our product. It's like he's like freaking out. He's like, we need to put AI like on every slide deck, on every offering, etc.
AI,
And
AI,
so
AI.
yeah, and I think that now when you're servicing these organizations, you're literally telling them we're making you smarter, and like people like being smart. That's why like they buy books or go to the gym because they might seem like they're smarter about their life choices, etc. So I think it's probably a very profitable move for Delegate in the long run for sure.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. One thing I've learned, man, is I don't know anything. I'm just an idiot going at it, learning, making mistakes, trying to surround myself with smart people that know more than I know, and that's why I want to have these conversations, because I think there are a lot of people in my position, and in your position, that can get a lot of value out of these conversations.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. Yeah. Definitely agree with that statement of you're an it. No, I'm joking. But you, you know quite a few things as well. Don't shoot yourself down. I think that's why you're in the position you're in, right? But it's just always like inviting yourself to just do stuff that's unknown, just to kind of see what comes on the other side. And ironically, you start kind of building this web of knowledge, and you just don't know when building that house. Like now I sort of built that house, so maybe one day I'm at home, or I buy a house, or I'm at my parents' house, and then I'm like, wait, like I guess I could hire a handyman, but I'm like, why don't I just look it up on YouTube? Like honestly, like, and then I save like $20, or I might end up making a mistake, but it's just a difference in level of confidence. So yeah, I think that's personally the right way to think about it. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I guess the last part, wrap this up. This was our first podcast, guys. Just so you're aware, we are winging this first one. We just wanted to have a conversation. As you can tell, I did not turn any lights on in my room. So we went from like very bright to like we're in a very intimate, dark setting, me and Carlos, just the way we like it.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
Um, for those of you that don't know Carlos, Carlos, this is an opportunity for you to plug your lead logics and any of your social media pages that people can follow you on
Yeah,
to
sure.
learn
Well,
more
first of
about you.
all, well, thanks for having me on. So if anyone wants more info on me, you can just probably easiest place to see me is on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. It's just my full name, Carlos Arbona, A-R-B as in boy, O, and as in Nancy, A. And then I have a website, carlosarbona.com, where I blog. I blog pretty frequently. So that's an easy way to kind of stay up to date on stuff. And then, yeah, Lead Logic's just like really, it's like a small prospecting agency. I really just help out friends with trying to scale their business and just apply some of the knowledge I have. And so,
I can provide a referral right now. I've been using Lead Logics for the last 2 months, and we've definitely seen an increase in our inbound flow just from Carlos's cold emails. So
yeah, sure.
it's been a good benefit to our business, and you guys should consider following him on X and talking to him
Yeah,
more.
it's funny because like I still type twitter.com, and so it's X now, but you still write Twitter. So in my head, it's Twitter. Like
Oh yeah,
I don't write x.com. So everyone's
I would
like,
have said Twitter too, but I would have said Twitter if I was asked, but I noticed that you said Twitter, so I was like, oh, it's not actually Twitter.
yeah, it's funny because like I'll meet people and I'll be like, yeah, I have my Twitter, whatever. We're talking about Twitter and I bring up Twitter. They're like, do you mean X? And I'm like, yeah.
That
And
really
I'm like,
grinds the gears.
yeah, so like you're really great at this conversation stuff, That's what I would say. So, but hey, thanks for having me, dude. This was super fun.
So
100%, 100%. Okay, dude.
awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Let me just have a good one, guys. Bye.